Good evening, Brendan Corrigan. How are you?
Oliver, I'm very well, and I'm glad to be greeted by your dogs as well. Are there your dogs I can hear in the background?
No, there's some neighbour dogs. My dogs are very quiet.
Oh, okay. Well, I
Thank
thought maybe
God.
they were trying to sing this, Ollie.
Oh
Um,
no.
can you hear this, everybody? It's coming home. It's
Uh,
why I've got a. I'm gonna say it's why I've got a white shirt on. It's all for England. Football's coming home. I'm gonna turn this off before I get addicted to
I'm
it.
I'm glad you've finally seen sense, Brendan, and decided to support your neighbours.
Or as some Irish people like to say, we're supporting the mainland, Ollie. I take it you have been watching the games, though, yes, and more than watching them,
Uh,
perhaps.
I certainly watched the last game and didn't feel too clever this morning. Um, and I have to say, I know we're not really going to talk about this, but I have to say it's not a great way to win. I don't think anybody in England particularly wanted to win in that way, and fair play to Denmark.
Well, anyway, you're in the final, and as somebody said, an English friend of mine, football's either coming home or football's going to Rome. So it's one or the other. We'll find out on Sunday, and of course, we will be talking more about football later on, but from a Colombian specific angle. By the way, people might notice I've got a new backdrop to me here because for the sixth time in 16 months, I'm in a new apartment. The markets have opened already for how long I'll stay in this one, but hopefully I'll see out the year. Anyway, Ollie, let's have a look at what's coming up on the show tonight in another jam-packed edition. And with Disney set to showcase to the world Colombia's more charming side with the release later this year of the animated movie Encanto. On tonight's Bogotá Nights, Colombia's only live and interactive English language chat show, guys, we're going to explore some of that magical realism, as the Colombian Tourism Board puts it itself. From fascinating flora and fauna and enchanting experiences to alluring landscapes and finger-licking good food, we're focusing, for the most part, on what's awesome about this country. What makes Colombia truly special for you? From the mundane to the marvelous, from the simple to the spectacular, we want to hear about it. Send us your comments right now by using the live message facility, and your messages will appear on the screen here below us. Or if you're watching this recorded, you can still get involved by commenting on where you're viewing or via tweet. The handle being at Bogotá Post, everybody's favourite English language newspaper, of which Oliver Pritchard is the deputy editor, and the hashtag you can use is Bogotá Nights, the name of the show. This show is all about viewer interaction after all, so get writing to us, guys. Before that, it's our take on the week's big news stories, and outside of following football's journey home, Ollie also found time to get the COVID-19 vaccine. He'll give us the essential insider's guide shortly. But before that, the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, the CIDH, using its Spanish acronym, has published its findings and recommendations following its investigations into the various abuse allegations during the protests that started here in late April. Ollie, is there anything really surprising or shocking in this report, and how has the Colombian government responded to it?
Well, it's exactly how we thought they would always respond to it. They've kind of said, yeah, we hear you, but we're not going to do most of those things. So it's quite a pointed response. I think people are saying it's a very harsh response. I don't think that's true. I think it's exactly what you expect most countries to do, where basically, they don't want things like human rights getting in the way of how they like running their country. So, yeah, I didn't expect much from the International Court, and it doesn't look like much is going to happen, with the exception of minor police review.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, maybe the big takeaway from it, that one of the recommendations is that they're asking the Colombian government to separate or to remove the Ministry of Defense being in charge of the police. Now, I'm from a country, Ollie, where our police force is a national police force, and it's the Minister for Justice who's in charge ultimately for the police. So in Colombia, I guess it's something similar, but you're from a country, of course, where every police force is all broken down by regions and districts and things like that, which similar to the United States and other countries too. So how do you see this one playing out? Again, in that response from the Colombian government, from the president's office, from the Cancilleria as it was officially, I think, they're saying, well, the police are going to stay under the guidance of the Ministry of Defense.
Yeah, I would be surprised if there was a significant change. I'd imagine they stay in Min Defensa, possibly with their own kind of boss. Maybe they don't report directly to the to the defense minister. It's really hard to say what's going to happen. I suspect what we're going to see, Brendan, is a really sort of tokenistic change. I don't think we're going to see massive change. I don't think we're going to see impactful and lasting change.
Yeah, one thing I have to say that stood out for me in the government's response as well, it was kind of like they were saying that the CIDH, or the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, were poking their noses in certain things that had nothing to do with them, like the implementation of the peace accords, something to do with petro as well. So it's kind of going, guys, you were allowed into the country to inspect how the protests were going, but what were you doing looking into other things? There's a little bit of a slap on the wrist.
Exactly. And actually, Duque does make a few fair points, inside of his, almost by accident, he makes a few fair points. Like, as he says, there are lots and lots of aid agencies and international human rights groups operating in Colombia, many of them directly from the UN. I think he said something like 30 of them operating. And actually, what we'd really like to see is them being allowed to do their job properly, rather than inviting in, yet another organization. Colombia's got a really good line, as have many countries, especially in Latin America, really good line in sort of claiming to do something and having everything look good on paper, but not deliver in reality. And I think that would be exactly what would happen, in this case.
Yeah, the optics are good, but the theory and the practice are often very different. When you talked about other bodies, of course, one other suggestion was the introduction of a monitoring body, of course, another organization or entity to be brought into it. Claudia Lopez, our beloved mayor, seemed to have jumped on this one, and she liked the idea, and that sparked off a little bit of another twat between spat, I should say, between Claudia Lopez and the government, specifically the vice president came out and had a few harsh words, again telling Claudia Lopez to stay out of it. It's none of her business.
Yeah, I actually think that's one of the better changes that Colombia could realistically implement. Put in proper control. Well, again, as we say, implementation is likely and execution is likely to be a problem. But it would be nice to see some sort of forum whereby people felt protected from police, abuse of power, and having that in there with civilian oversight. I think that would be incredibly important. I'm with Claudia on this one.
By the way, just have to ask you as well. They did make a specific point about minorities, LGBTI community, LGBTIQ+, I guess, to give it its proper title, ethnic minorities and things like that. Colombia, if you're comparing it to Latin America, would you agree to say in terms of LGBTI, from a Bogotá perspective, is fairly open? Of course, we had Pride, the Gay Pride March last weekend. But would you agree with that? Obviously, many countries have a long way to go with this, but compared internationally and in the region, Colombia would appear not to be too bad in that regard.
But Bogotá, yeah.
Bogotá.
I would definitely say that, yeah. again, lots of work to be done, yada, yada, yada. But if I just think about the decade I've been in, when I arrived in Colombia a decade ago, Gay Pride wasn't a big event. People literally threw rocks at the marchers. It was impossible to see men holding hands or, showing signs of affection anywhere outside a tiny block of Chapinero. Whereas now it's not unusual in the park to see a gay couple holding hands. I've been in the center of Bogotá, two gay men walking down, holding hands, cuddling, etc. It's certainly not as bad as it used to be. And in terms, look, some countries are very good at dealing with indigenous issues. Mexico's pretty good, etc. Chile, notoriously very bad. I'd say Colombia's towards the better end of that.
Okay. Of course, this report is almost like it ties up a lot of things that we've been talking about for the last 2 months, really, since these protests kicked off in late April. And then another element, because we've mentioned in so many episodes, so many shows when we've talked about the protests, that while you might think, oh, well, this could never happen with a North European head on you, like that the police could be involved, or they've got paramilitaries in to stir up trouble, and paid rioters and things like that. But of course, this week we had, I think it was 10 military were charged by the HEP, the Special Court for Peace. What does HEP stand for again? Especial, yeah.
Especial para la Paz, yeah.
There we go, yeah. This kind of special justice for peace. So with the HEP and the false positives that, of course, took place under Álvaro Uribe's stewardship of this country, his 2 terms as president. Again, it just shows you the kind of stuff that can happen in this country that you would think, no, that could never happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, look, it's a step forward, but still we're seeing kind of one general, 9 underlings. I find it quite interesting that false positives, it was a big story, and then it kind of went away, and it wasn't talked about much, and it's really shot back into the headlines, rightly so, over the past couple of years. So look, there's a long way to go yet, but fingers crossed there might be some kind of justice at the end of all of this.
Yeah, again, is it the kind of sacrificial lambs as we talked about? Because also this week we heard the news that one of the police officers involved in the killing of Javier Ordóñez, which sparked protests back in September, that brutal tasering that we saw of Javier Ordóñez, that he's now been sentenced to 20 years. But I guess kind of for officialdom, they kind of go, look, we found the police officer, we've charged him. But again, if we're talking about a whole force that has got problems, well, that's not really going to solve anything, is it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, the thing about Javier Ordóñez, it's not so much the officer that committed the crime. There's big parallels here with sort of George Floyd in the US. It's the attitude of the police that this was an officer like any other. This wasn't, a special case of one guy acting off on his own. This was no, this is what we do. This is standard. We can do this because we're the police. And that's what you really need to change. Otherwise, you're just going to keep on having situations like this again and again and again. Yeah,
well, as we said, all these things kind of tie in, and we are set for another big day of protest Tuesday week. Is, of course, the 20th of July, Independence Day here, so no doubt our show that week, we might have a lot to talk about, and we'll see how things pan out that week. But Ali, we had an incident, and this is kind of breaking news, or it's news to me, and sometimes people might be wondering if it looks like we're typing on our keyboards. Well, it's the only way we can communicate here about things that we don't actually need to broadcast. So we do have our own little channels to talk. It's the challenges of doing a live show, but not doing it face-to-face, doing it virtually. But thanks, StreamYard. It's a wonderful program to allow us to do it. But in Haiti, of course, we saw the assassination of the sitting president. Now, some people would say that's not a terrible development in itself, considering what he'd been linked to and what he's been accused of. But apparently, 4 Colombians involved in this, because there were a number of mercenaries, and it seems a very strange incident in a country that has had a host of incidents. Yeah, so what do we know about this?
Well, what seems to be coming out now, I mean, originally people were reporting that there were Spanish speakers in the group, which I think everybody thought, well, this might be connected to Puerto Rico, which is, right there. But looking into this, we see here Leon Charles, the Director General of the Haitian Police, in a press conference has said today that they've arrested 15 Colombians and 2 US soldiers with Haitian origins. 3 Colombians died, another 8 are free, haven't been captured, but they attempted to capture them. They must have sort of got away when the raid went on. They're saying that it could be up to as many as 26, and they appear to be kind of ex-military from Colombia. The Colombian government, for their part, is putting towards a little team to send. Putting a little team together to send a report to Interpol. So gosh knows where that's going to go.
And what, the Colombians that died in the actual shootout of the incident, or in the aftermath of it, or how exactly? Or do we know?
Pardon?
Oh, sorry. I was saying the Colombians that died. You said what? A number of them died.
Three. Yeah. This is. I mean, I'm just going off of Espectador here. Apparently. Espectador going off of the report from this fellow Leon Charles, the Director General of the Haitian Police, and that's exactly what he says. 3 Colombians died. Another 8 are loose. On the loose.
But died in combat then, or it's not clear.
Yeah, I would assume as they came to detain them. Yeah, I'd imagine if you're a bunch of mercenaries and the police turn up to arrest you, you might well be fighting back.
Yeah, well, I haven't dabbled into the old world of mercenaries yet.
Diego Milano, the heavily criticized defense minister, says here, initially the information shows that these are Colombians retired from the army, from the state forces. We've given instructions for collaboration in the development of this investigation and to clear up the facts. So we shall see.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll have more on that next week as that story develops. We'll watch it closely and what happens as well for Haiti going forward. Interesting and rather fascinating story, kind of out of a James Bond movie, almost, it seems like it. Or perhaps
bizarre.
A Jason Bourne movie. Anyway, Ollie, let's get to something a little bit more personal then. You went and got your jab last Friday? Yeah, last Friday.
I most certainly did, yeah. There's a big report on it, so many more details on the Bogotá Post. We have an article called A Jab in the Arm, which details the process. Put simply, Brendan, it wasn't as bad as it could have been. On the other hand, it could have been organised a little bit better. So, how did it go? Basically, I arrived for my appointment at 2:20 and was immediately told that appointments are a complete waste of time. So I went and stood in the queue. The queue moved pretty quickly. It's about 2.5 hours from arriving at Centro Comercial Avenida Chile to walking off to get on the Transmilenio and go home. Definitely a jab that I felt, and I didn't feel too clever on Saturday. I was certainly in a daze for most of the day, but after about 24 hours, side effects have worn off, and here I am in a few days. Can't bother to calculate it now, but in another week or so, I should be fully protected. Johnson and Johnson. And by the way, just in case it isn't clear, absolute free choice, at least when I went, other than Pfizer, which was only available, as we talked about the other week, only available as a second dose because of dosage supplies. Other than that, if you want Sinovac, if you want AstraZeneca, if you want Johnson & Johnson, there is absolutely no pressure to go one way or the other.
Okay, but Johnson & Johnson, now you broke up for me. I'm not sure if it's my connection here in my new house or whatever, but Johnson & Johnson is a one-shot thing or not?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, correct.
Okay, so that's okay. So you kind of have to wait a period until the body adapts to it, is it? And then
it's about 2 weeks until you're fully protected. They're just sort of building up the defences. It's worth noting, Brendan, that the guy from Mi Vacuna really wanted to get me out of that line. He was kind of saying, well, if you're a foreigner, I said, no, look, I'm resident here. You can see my cedula. You can see that I'm here. I'm registered on the database. My recommendation is if you're an exemption person, so if you're not qualifying for the age limit, but you're going in on an exemption, for example, I'm a teacher, which means I get it a bit earlier. If you've got some sort of exemption, screenshot all of your registration details or print out copies, of course, so that you can easily prove your system. Other than that, more or less, everything was pretty well organized, pretty well registered, pretty well put together. It is weird, though. You actually go through the Centro Comercial. You're riding around on the elevators and stuff like that, the escalators. I mean, I thought we'd be hived away into kind of like just a whole separated, part. But no, we're really in the middle of everything. You're walking around until you get to a couple of locales which have just been commandeered. Rather than put new business in them, they've just put a little, vaccination setup. Very bizarre.
Yeah, that's exactly the same in Centro Comercial Santa Fe up here next to me in the north, the far north of the city. There's just on the third floor, 2 locales have been taken over, and that's what people are queuing up. Yeah, all like lined up for nearly a kilometre at times. It goes a pretty long line on some days, lining up to get their jab. Now there have been stories that some resident foreigners or visa-holding foreigners who pay their APS, they pay their health insurance here, were turned away. What's the story there?
Hard to say. There's a guy down in Montpos, Richard McCool, who reported on Twitter that, from what I can gather, he was turned away by local healthcare people down on the coast. So again, and like I say, even with me, I did have to stand my ground a little bit and sort of insist and point out that I was allowed to get my vaccine. Of course, if you're in a smaller place, that might be a lot harder to do.
Yeah, maybe they're being overly protective of the jobs they have for true Colombians. One thing, though, where we are officially, I guess now, just to mention that we're already down now to the people aged the range 40 to 44 that they can go now and get their vaccine. So we seem to be running through the ages pretty quickly.
Well, we're looking at 300,000 jabs a day. I mean, that compares pretty favourably to the UK. It's actually above the UK at the moment. Although obviously our vaccination in the UK is slowing down just because so many people have been jabbed.
Yeah, it's kind of those who may not want it now at this stage, he says with a wry smile. But anyway, people can check out my blog if they want to see where I'm coming from at the moment. But as I said, one is not doctrinaire about these things. We should see how things progress. Anyway, it's not my time. We'll move on to matters of sport, Ollie. And we'll have to start with football, of course, and not England. And not Italy. We're here to talk about matters more on this continent. We've had 2 Colombian games since the last show. A great win over Uruguay in penalties. Now, I think the vaccine might have been affecting you.
Would we say that was a great win?
Well, look, like Uruguay historically anyway, and
Oh yes,
like
a very good team. Yeah.
yeah. And I was going to say you were maybe kind of a bit out of it with the vaccine. I watched it in a sports bar really in Barrio Santandercito, so it was lively. So again, when you're in that environment, the game does seem a little bit more exciting.
Of course,
Perhaps if I was sitting at home streaming it or something, I'd probably go, yeah, this is boring. I'd switch over to a David Attenborough documentary or something. But yeah, well, they won anyway on penalties. But it kind of sometimes it goes, you win one on penalties, then you lose one. They had Argentina on Tuesday night. Fairly decent 1-1 draw again against the powerhouse that is Argentina. Another good goal from our Guajiro star as well, whose name escapes me at the moment. But
Diaz, yeah.
Diaz,
Lucha Diaz, yeah. I would say he's had a pretty good tournament, yeah. That was a lovely little finish as well. Really under a lot of pressure to hook it in like that. Real sort of, it makes me think it's a real football manager sort of goal.
Yeah, like he certainly, as you said, he's been one of the stars for Colombia. But anyway, then went to penalties and they lost. But of course, not without controversy, as it never is it, with Colombia and Argentina? No love lost really between them. But the Argentinian goalkeeper Martinez, a bit of gamesmanship really from him. I mean, what he did wasn't technically illegal, but the optics weren't good, were they?
I think that's what we refer to as antics, Brendan. And let's not forget that Colombia, of course, were no angels against Uruguay. Jerry Mina, especially, kind of dancing in front of the Uruguayan keeper Muslera, didn't look great. Doing his little thumb sucking and dancing right there in front of the keeper. It wasn't a good look, and Messi clearly was irritated by it. He was caught on video shouting at the Colombian players, "Oh yeah, you're going to dance now, are you?" And Jerry Mina, I mean, I have to say, Big Jerry really looked devastated when his penalty was saved. You rarely see a footballer show their emotions so quickly.
Well, I guess considering everything that was said to him by Martinez before he actually stepped up to take it, he was probably going, well, I can't miss this. But, in a game of mind games, he certainly lost out on that. Because, yeah, it's got a lot of coverage, and I actually saw it today. The story's still rumbling on, fascinating enough, really, that a citizens' rights group here have filed a complaint. I'm not sure whether they're filing the complaint against, I guess, the CONMEBOL, against the behaviour of Martinez, saying that it was obviously, well, I don't know what they're filing the complaint about, like what legal route they're going down. But you kind of think, look at lads, it's a game of football at the end of the day, you're out of it. And get on with it, because obviously the result's not going to be overturned. They're not going to retake the penalties.
No. That gets sorted out of time. It's unsportsmanlike behaviour, I think, is what it's called in football.
Yeah, and that's it. Of course, Colombia still have a game left. This time tomorrow.
Pointless, isn't it? I mean, no one wants a third and fourth place playoff in any competition. I'm a big fan of the Euros when they just they just don't have it, and it's just one thing. And to be honest, this was the competition that nobody wanted, Brendan. I mean, there's such a big difference watching 60,000 people or whatever it was, or 40,000 people at Wembley for the Ukraine-England match. In Rome. So watching a big crowd in Rome for Ukraine and England, and then immediately afterwards watching the Colombia match against Uruguay, just absolutely abandoned stadium. Same thing with the Argentina match; it just doesn't feel right. And again, contrasting that with the Denmark match yesterday, which was full of fans.
Yeah, cracking atmosphere, exactly. I'm guessing the respective football federations, there's more money. If you finish third, you'll get a little bit more than finishing fourth. So these days, they'll take any extra cash that's going. I'm guessing that's the case. And then the final, of course, is Saturday, Argentina, Brazil. Any preference?
Well, I mean, if Argentina win, football loses. So obviously Brazil.
An Englishman going against Argentina. You get it all here on Bogotá Nights. Quickly to the Tour de France before we get on to talking about everything wonderful and magical about Colombia in so many fields. It's not just nature or landscapes, but magical food, magical experiences, all that kind of stuff. That's coming up in about 2 minutes, and do get in touch with us, guys, about that or anything else you want to talk to us about. We want your messages. But Tour de France, we have a Colombian in second place.
We do. Rigoberto Urán, the Andreas Klöden of our times. He's one of those cyclists, Brendan, who just seems to manage to quite efficiently get himself up onto podium spots without ever looking like he might win the race. So a bit bizarre. And of course, in the Tour de France, it's always worth racing for second place, especially when the leader is, just in case our lawyers are watching, the leader is, I think we can say, suspiciously strong, unusually strong compared to the rest of the field. And of course, that does raise doubts in a sport like cycling. And so, yeah, definitely worth racing for the second and third place.
And by the way, when you compared Urán to that reference that you mentioned, the people who don't know cycling, basically always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
Kind of, but actually the thing about Klöden was, a rider like Jan Ullrich finished second but put up a big fight. Klöden was one of those guys that just kind of happened to finish on the podium, despite never looking even like he would win a stage, let alone, like he was really in the race. He just sort of seemed to be there all the time. Bizarre rider.
Okay. Oh, well, we wish him all the best. Paisa, is he? Urán? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Are
Great backstory.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe that's for another day. Another day, Ollie. We'll get into that. Or people, you can get in touch with Ollie via the Bogotá Post. Maybe he'll give us an article on. But let's get on to our big topic as time ticks on. We've left ourselves less than the half hour that we like to leave for this. And guys, we do want to hear from you because it's kind of in a nod to Encanto, the new Disney animated movie that's due to be released, well, in the US anyway, in November, so I take it more or less everywhere else as well in November, at the end of November, which it's about a Colombian girl who is part of a family here, but she doesn't have magical powers. That's all I know. That's the one line intro to the synopsis of the movie that I know. But talking of magic and enchanting and charming Colombia, we're going to focus on what we think and hopefully what you think as well is magical and charming and what has you in this country, or when you leave, you're back in your home country and you're going, God, I miss that from Colombia. We want to hear it all. So, Ollie, give us something. What for you is kind of, when Colombia comes to mind and you think of something magical, amazing, spectacular, what is it?
Well, I mean, without wanting to be cynical, we could say the magic way that a lot of public tax money finds its way into politicians' wallets. But on a more uplifting note, we can say, I'll tell you something that really does spring to mind. Whitewater rafting, and to be honest, it wasn't that white, the water, but it was pretty tame. But my gosh, Brendan, as we came down this river in Caquetá, in the arse end of Caquetá, with former demobilized FARC members taking us down the river, which of course they know so well. Absolutely magical experience to have these enormous kind of walls of green as you're piloting this tiny little boat down a river. Absolutely, when I was young and I used to read Tintin books about rainforests in South America, this was exactly what it looked like. Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, that does sound magical and wonderful. I just have to ask about the rapids, though. Were they rapid or fairly tame?
Apparently, there was another group staying there. there was another group staying there with us. They were kind of like a bunch of university students from Bogota. They apparently had been on a much rougher trip the previous day. So to the day we went was rather a lot calmer.
Tamer affair. Well, just and it wasn't my intention to go into this, but just quickly to mention, in terms of whitewater rafting, I did it on a more popular route. I'm taking it. Like San Hill is obviously very popular for tourists. The Rio Suarez, mentioning Uruguay, the Rio Suarez. Those were rapid in it. Now I'm kind of as comfortable in water as a handicapped cat, but with a life jacket, it's okay. But it was pretty rapid, and to instill great confidence in those of us on the raft, our pilots, our captains, were smoking marijuana. So that was great.
I thought you were going to suggest that they were going to be whipping out the aguardiente. Yeah, I'm almost disappointed.
I'm not sure what would be better. They were insistent that we would fall into the water on numerous occasions, which of course we did. I've learned not to panic when I have a life jacket on, because otherwise I would panic. But when you're flowing in rapids, it's kind of like, okay, you've got your helmet on and everything, so if you do hit a rock, but accidents do happen. It was an interesting experience, another magical moment in Colombia. But speaking of landscapes as well, and I'm a big man for the mountains, and like there are so many places around here. Like in many ways, we're kind of spoiled for choice that you almost become a bit complacent with it. You're kind of going, like there's another lovely, stunning mountain range and lovely hills to look at and scenery. Like, for example, I remember Finlandia in the Eje Cafetero, it was kind of lesser known than Salento. Now I think it's pretty popular in its own right, but beautiful scenery around there. But one place I kind of wasn't expecting to see something magical or alluring or enchanting, and to kind of to borrow from Rod Stewart with his song, "Where the ocean meets the sky, I'll be sailing." This was where the ocean meets the desert, I'll be drooling almost. It was in La Guajira, where there's the golden sand, and then it just opens out onto the blue sea, onto the ocean. It's just a spectacular vista. I know you've been there as well. I found it just quite, put you in a trance almost.
Yeah, huge dunes, aren't there? I'm a much bigger fan of the Guajira Desert than Tatacoa. Again, very different types of desert. But I agree with you totally. I mean, magical days, waking up, sleeping in a hammock on the beach in Cabo de Vela, eating little lobsters. Oh, wonderful times. Massive fan of La Guajira.
Yeah, and is it becoming, or was it, I guess, during the pandemic, of course, tourist numbers are down internationally anyway, but like it seemed to be becoming relatively popular, because obviously tourist numbers here were increasing anyway. But you do kind of like, go on, yeah.
I'd say you've probably got bigger problems with masses of massive influx of immigration from the Venezuelan side of La Guajira. There's a recent article by a Bogotá-based journalist, Stephen Grattan, about that in The Guardian this week, which was excellent. Serious problems up there, very serious.
Yeah, and I guess there are things that we're going to see get perhaps even worse in the years to come, when we're kind of dealing with the fallout from the pandemic and economic problems and whatever the situation is in Venezuela right now. Difficult to know because of the pandemic and the way borders have been shut and things like that. But speaking of nature and kind of mixing nature, then the flora and the fauna, and we've both been to Guaviare. Again, some stunning landscapes to see there as well. Kind of, on the doorsteps of the Amazon. But in terms of animals, they're like just one day in San Jose de Guaviare, the capital of Guaviare, but really kind of a tumbleweed town in many ways. Walking home after having a couple of drinks, on the rare occasion that I'd have a beer or two, and spotting an anteater. It was a baby one as well. I think it obviously became lost or whatever, strange from its mother. But that was kind of just for me weird. Obviously, an animal that I wouldn't see in Ireland, that's for sure.
No, that must have been one. I mean, I've seen an anteater in the Llanos, sort of outside of Chopal, and yeah, they're wonderful animals, aren't they? They're absolutely spectacular. Um, I mean, actually, by the way, something I was going to note, because we hooked in with this idea of Encanto. There are little capybaras. There's a little capybara family in the trailer for Encanto. Because, there's this kid that appears to be able to control animals. He's riding around on a jaguar, that sort of thing. I mean, it's a little bit cheesy, isn't it? I mean, I'm not, I'm always a little bit leery of kind of, when they go, oh yeah, Colombians are just like, they're so in tune with nature, and you kind of think, Colombia's got a lot of, culture. It's not just animals. But it was cute. I thought the trailer, by the way, for Encanto was really very Colombian. I thought it really captured Colombia quite well. As I'm not a big fan of Disney, I will probably not see the film, but I thought that was a pretty good sort of representation. They got the coffee right, they got the houses right, they got the skin tones right, which I thought was very impressive. The people are wearing the right clothes. It doesn't look like Mexico's been transported onto Colombia for once, and I thought that was really nice. Anyway, the little capybaras in that clip reminded me of sort of seeing giant herds of capybara roaming around in Llano, in the Llanos. Absolutely. I mean, just wonderful, wonderful creatures.
Yeah, my first encounter with capybaras was actually in the Pampas in Bolivia. But yeah, they're kind of the animals that you see. You kind of like to grab them and take them home, which I know Ollie will be completely against. Leave them to nature. And what else? You mentioned Encanto. Sorry to kind of digress for a second.
We were devastated when we were. Doing sort of a safari on the Llanos. Absolutely devastated to be served chicken in the middle of the day at one of these big farms. And we were saying, there's all those capybaras over there. Why don't you chuck a spear in the side of one of them? But apparently you need to organise that, days in advance. So it wasn't happening.
Okay. Are they protected? No, surely not.
You can eat capybara. Have you never eaten? Have you never actually got it? Yeah. Okay. So I think there's some restrictions on the meat. I don't think you're allowed. You certainly can't buy or sell it anywhere in the country. It's quite restricted in that respect. But they are farmed.
Okay. Well, I just say there was one thing I wanted to mention though about Encanto. Digressing for a second, but is there Colombian input on the production and in terms of direction and stuff like that in the movie? There must be if they've got it kind of spot on.
They've definitely got some advisor that said, let's get the right kind of music, let's get the right kind of vibe. Definitely.
Okay. Melissa Fabregas, a friend of the show, I had this kind of telepathic thing that this message was coming, but she said that the most delightful, enchanting thing in Colombia these days is that Amazon is here. Amazon is now delivering to them. And I know, Ollie Pritchard, that is music to your ears.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. Yeah. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of Jeff Bezos and his, business model of basically break the law and screw everybody else. But yeah, not my favorite thing. The Colombian Amazon, on the other hand, I think Leticia is a wonderful city. I've talked at great length before about how much I love Leticia. I think it's a very nice place. And again, I would say actually, Brendan, if we're talking about magical moments, as I said, having read books when I was little about South America and about tropical regions, and having an idea in my head of what a rainforest would be like, actually going into the Amazon for the first time was just an experience that, in very many ways, I think sort of completed me in some ways.
Yeah, obviously I grew up watching, for the second time tonight to mention David Attenborough, but watching his documentaries on the BBC and other nature programs. Always fascinated by it. My immediately older brother was probably more into it than me, but I'd always be watching them too, and then kind of to see and to experience them for yourself. It's something that I guess when you're watching them when you're younger, you think, oh well, that's another world. You'll never go and see it, but then to actually go and see it does kind of fulfill a dream. And there's one thing.
We're fishing for piranhas. I mean, that's wow! Really, we're fishing for piranhas. That's mental. Yeah.
But a kind of linked thing, because just before I came to South America for the first time ever in 2008, I was watching this documentary with Bruce Parry on the BBC. I see our producer has joined us here on the show. Yeah. But now I think I may have got it wrong. I thought it was about ayahuasca in Colombia or in the Amazon, or be it Peru or wherever. But somebody told me subsequently there was actually another similar route in Africa. So maybe I was confused. But anyway, I thought that. So in my head then, I always had this thing, I want to do Yahe ayahuasca, because Bruce Parry was talking about this. He had this really kind of deep moment, and it changed his perspective on life. And he was able to, while he was under the influence of it, he was able to kind of put himself in the shoes of others and see how his actions were affecting others, and what he said and what he did and his behavior and that, and how it affected others. So I thought, wow, this is amazing, a life-changing experience. So I did go with a very open mind for somebody who people might think is a little bit conservative in other areas. But I went with a very open mind to try ayahuasca just in the hills near the town of Apulo. Years ago now, but I have to say it didn't live up to the expectations I had, unfortunately. I did write a blog story about it at the time, so you can search that on my blogs, put in a search for ayahuasca or yahe. It goes into all the detail. Just to say that I didn't have any life-changing experience. It was one of the most uncomfortable experiences I ever had at this ceremony at midnight in the middle of the forest and the hills just outside Apulo. Well, about an hour away from Apulo. An hour's a good hour's walk, more than that. And other people were getting high, and of course, part of the process of ayahuasca is to cleanse yourself and vomit. And for somebody who has an intense dislike for vomiting, I was resisting until I could resist no more. I basically put it this way: anyone who has drunk a pint of Guinness, think of a stale pint of Guinness that's, I don't know, stale for about 20 years and maybe solidified a little bit, sitting in your stomach, and you can feel it sitting there, and you're just, I want this thing out of me. There were other more seasoned yahe ayahuasca takers during our ceremony, and they were like, "Oh no, Brendan, just let yourself go, let it take over, and you'll go flying and you experience all this." Yeah, it didn't work. You've never tried it, no?
No, I don't. I mean, from all I've been told, it's just a very strong psychedelic with extremely unpleasant side effects, as you describe.
But you see, this is the thing: when it's wrapped up in indigenous culture, for some people, then it's untouchable. Like, you can't say anything negative about it. It's another drug.
Yeah, actually, and that's the really dangerous thing. I know we're slightly off topic here, but that is actually, I think, a really dangerous part of tourism here, which is this idea that, we did an article about this, I think, 3 or 4 years ago, after a British tourist was killed after a yahe ceremony. Actually, a lot of the guys kind of involved in organizing yahe trips or excursions or ceremonies, and I'm certainly not saying all of them, but a lot of them are pretty creepy and dodgy, to be honest. There's certainly there's a hell of a lot of stories about sexual abuse from women who have been on those types of things.
Well, seeing that we're not mentioning names, and as I said, I know we're kind of getting off topic here, but while we're on about it, like the shaman who was involved in our ceremony did subsequently come out that he had abused some people. And also in that, and I'm not saying that these girls were abused, but in that ceremony, there was like about 20 people, minimum 20, there was probably more. And one mother had her like 4-year-old boy there. They're kind of going, what? This is mad. You know, like, would you give your your toddler, your 4-year-old child, whatever, LSD? Of course not. But because it's Yahe and it's in a ceremony and it's in the jungle and it's all indigenous, it's wonderful and great.
I'm very skeptical of that sort of thing. Just suddenly, though, something that's just popped into my head. There is something, and I haven't been to the university in quite a long time now, but one of the things I really did used to love was an afternoon coffee. And I mean, coffee in Colombia is generally fairly magical in of itself. But sitting out on the terrace, having an afternoon coffee, catching up on a little bit of admin, maybe a little bit of planning, and just seeing little green-throated hummingbirds kind of wander through the terrace, pollinating flowers along the way. Absolutely. I mean, I would say that if you don't find hummingbirds magical little things, then you're a pretty cold person. Yeah, you're probably dead inside.
Well, I will safely say, and I'm not just saying this because I did mention this before, I do love to see hummingbirds as well. Just the movement of them and everything. It is kind of fascinating to watch them, the way they just fly the wings moving at incredible speed. And no surprise to Angela, because she's your colleague at Extra Now as well, loves the coffee and the hummingbirds. Mentioning, by the way, beverages. We did get a message from somebody when we put this on social media. A few people were commenting, and Richard Stoller, who is an occasional viewer and commenter here, he said having 9 a.m. beer at a market. I guess that's more when you're in a town as well. I kind of like that. You rock up in a maybe Tierra Caliente where there's a Saturday market, and there's just old men in there with their sombreros on or whatever. Having an aguila at 9 o'clock in the morning. The problem is, of course, for our cultures, they can go in and have their few beers and get out of there by midday. But if we started drinking at 9 o'clock, we'd probably keep on going until we couldn't drink anymore.
To be fair, Colombia is a country where they know how to drink. It's not like going to the United States. No one in the United States knows how to drink alcohol, but Colombia absolutely does. I love, and that's a very basic fact, but I love the fact that you see like petacos set up, the big crates, and it's got its little 30 slots, and the men will diligently start whacking the empty beers into the petaco. And like you say, by early afternoon, they've got 1 or 2 petacos stacked up and, charging along. Well,
the other thing as well, of course, is leaving the beers on your table, though, before even the petaco comes along. It's kind of almost like a macho symbol. Men
exactly.
Kind of go, look, we've had 30 beers already, and we're leaving them here on the table. Of course, in some other tiendas, they use it as a mechanism to count how many beers you've had, which is always open to corruption, which did happen to me on one occasion, to do a bit of manipulation. That you get some other people's beers put on your table, and then you have to pay for them. Angela mentions dragonflies. Yeah, I mean, I would say dragonflies as well. Of course, the thing is, from a uniquely Colombian perspective, like there are dragonflies in Ireland, so about the biggest insect we probably have flying around Ireland. Would I be correct in saying that? I don't think there's any other bigger flying insect than a dragonfly in our side of the world.
No. Are there many other bigger flying insects, full stop, in the world?
A locust?
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah,
locust,
I suppose, flying cockroaches, yeah.
But certainly dragonflies are fascinating little creatures to watch. Just, another thing about, again, beverages, that came up, because another one was posted saying the caldo de castillo, that's a magical, Caldo de Castilla is a magical thing for one. It was Jonathan Hemming again, who usually chips in with a few comments, but he must be otherwise engaged, our viewer in Tunga tonight, probably gearing up for the Euro final on Sunday. But yeah, are you into your caldos or changuas or any of those, Holly?
I think everyone's into a caldo de costilla when they've got a hangover. And I am a massive fan of changua, yes. I don't understand people that don't like changua. Not something I go out of my way to. It's certainly not something I'd make in the house. But when I'm outside of the house, yeah, I might relax my vegetarianism a bit and have some changua.
Yeah, and I haven't had a proper changua in a while. I've kind of been reducing my milk consumption, not kind of deliberately, just more accidentally. But I do need to get back on the changua horse. So to put it, well, we're also talking of food. Have to mention it in Manizales. Now, if I could remember the correct street, it mightn't exist anymore now. When was it there? About 3 years ago. But the best, most delicious I've ever had. They were really oozing with hot cheese. It was like melted cheese, delicious.
Great stuff.
Well, Ali, I lost you there for a second. I don't know, did you lose me?
Yeah, I thought you were sort of wobbling a bit, but yeah, dripping with cheese is definitely. I mean, that's not saying you get much of in Colombia, is it?
Well, the thing is, though, I've had almojábanas and they're just dry. It's like when you get these aesthetically pleasing desserts and then you try them and they're very dry.
Yeah.
But these almojábanas and Manizales, yeah, they were the fine. Like I'd go back to Manizales just for those almojábanas alone. I never had one like it since. It was delicious. Well, and we're nearly out of time here, because there's one other one. We're on the food side of things. I had just this week, I was handed an empanada with chicharrona, and people know that I love my pan de chicharrona, the pork scratching hot bread, especially when it's directly out of the oven. But I was handed this empanada, delicious with the hot pork scratching. When I was given it, it was in a tienda, and I asked the guy where did he get it. I had to wait a few days until the woman was back because it was at the weekend, and then she wasn't there. But I got her number and everything, so I went back to where she has them from. Mil 300. Delicious. It was last night I went there. I had two of these things. I mean, I don't think they'd be great for the health, but they were delicious. My new favorite empanada. These things.
Really, chicharron empanadas. Wow.
Yeah.
That's. Yeah. I think you're right. You're not going to get. That sounds like the sort of thing I'd expect to be served in Scotland, but maybe deep fried.
Well, anyway, not every day. It'd be like having an Irish, like an English or an Irish fry-up every morning. Wouldn't be good for the health going forward.
You'd end up dead pretty fast, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else, Ollie, on your mind?
Oh yeah, I mean,
Colombia, enchanting Colombia.
Actually, one of the things that I think is always really nice is just looking up at the mountains and seeing like a little ribbon of cloud up in the forests. That's a really spectacular thing. Little moments of magic in daily life.
Yeah, we mentioned that last week after we were talking about going green in Bogotá. Like, to me, it's like almost like a little scarf or something, just nestling on top of the mountains, whatever it looks. It looks, it's enchanting is the word that we're using tonight. Yeah, well, our producer's telling us the time is up. I'm not sure, guys. I hope the connection was good enough for you, but at times, Ali, I was losing you. Might be an issue with my internet and my new lodgings here. I must check that out. But guys, it's called Richard.
Yes, sorry, I lost you a bit there, Brendan. So I guess, ciao.